there's an image here. And if you recognize this image, if you know what it is, keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. If you don't know what's in the image, now you can lower your hand. And there are a lot of reasons why you might not know what's in the image. Maybe you, maybe you're younger, maybe you grew up in another country. So there are plenty of reasons why you might not recognize it, but I want to understand who recognizes it. Now, how confident are you that you know what it is? If you were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, would you answer without using a lifeline? Only keep your hand up if you'd answer without using a lifeline. I see a few still that confident. I see Mike. I see a couple of the folks who are not on camera. I see Monica. We've got some folks who are that confident. Now, if you were on Final Jeopardy and you were going to bet your money, would you bet all of it? Only keep your hand up if you would bet all of your money on Final Jeopardy that you know what is in this picture.
Yep, I know what it is. Okay,
I do see a couple who still have hands up. I see Mike and let's see, of the folks not on camera, everyone there did put their hand down. So we're going to move to the next slide and everyone will see what is in the image. And Mike and perhaps a few others, you can see if you would actually have one big for naming this image. The Space Shuttle Challenger explodes shortly after takeoff. Okay, so Mike would be one of our first millionaire or at least Big Jeopardy winner. Toastmasters here in the local area would be very excited for him. What is the message here? I'm going to move on to a cautionary tale and talk about, let me make sure this screen sharing is working as I move on to a new screen. Are you seeing a red version of that image? Oh, yeah. So this is a news story from the New York Post, ran in 2014.
Oh my God.
Where the clothing brand American Apparel put out on their social media on July 4th, 2014, put out a version of this image that they had altered the color, but treated it as a matter of celebration.
No.
It was very inappropriate. I would describe it as a disaster. And when you never want to make the kind of mistake that gets your mistake at your job written up in the newspaper, right? We don't want to do that. So that's why I say this is a very cautionary tale about using an image when you're not confident that you know what it is, right? Know what is in your image before you use it. Welcome to this presentation where you'll learn some ways to use images with confidence. We've started with this introduction, a cautionary tale about knowing what's in your image. We'll pause now for a brief technology orientation to help you understand the interactive elements of this presentation. And while you get set up with some of the technology, I will talk through the learning outcomes that you'll take away from this presentation. So we'll be using a technology called NearPod to do some interactive activities and understanding checks throughout the presentation. You'll go to this website, nearpod.com/student, and this is why This is why Jim suggested that you might want to have a second device if you have one handy, but you can also do this by taking Zoom out of full screen and being in another window on your browser. Okay, you'll go to NearPod and it will ask you for a code, and Jim should already have that code and he will put that in the chat for you. It's a 5-letter code. Another thing you may want to do is get a heads up on a website we'll be visiting later called CC Search. And that website is search.creativecommons.org. And Jim will post that link in the chat also. So if you don't want to type the web link in there, you can just copy and paste that web link. Go ahead and go ahead and get yourself set up with these two aspects of the technology we'll be using while I review the learning outcomes that you'll take away from the presentation. My goal is that after this presentation, you'll be ready to describe some of the legal and ethical issues to consider when you're using an image in your presentation. Also, you'll learn how to make images accessible to people who use screen readers. And you'll learn an easy way to find, caption, and cite pictures using this tool called CC Search. In other words, I'll teach you some things to worry about, and then I'll teach you the solution so you don't have to worry too hard. We'll pause after each section for some NearPod check-ins and to take questions from the Zoom chat. Let's go ahead and do a brief technology orientation to NearPod with a practice question. So go to that nearpod.com/student and type in the 5-letter code. And we'll do a practice NearPod question.
You're silent.
Jennifer, sorry, I think I just accidentally muted you. Sorry about that.
I think I'm back. How much did you miss? We're going out to
5
NearPod.
seconds. Yeah, you're fine.
And you have probably typed into the you typed in the NearPod code. And I think you see the welcome screen that says picture this. I'm going to take you now to our practice question.
Jennifer, are we logging in as students?
Can folks see the NearPod practice question? When you look at NearPod, don't look at that Zoom, look at the NearPod screen. Okay.
I've gone into
Question 1 is asking you, which is an example of an image that could be used in a presentation? Choose the best answer.
NearPod. TQSCF. Code.
Looks like most folks have weighed in, so I'm going to show you what it looks like when I share out from NearPod. I share out the responses, and on your screen now, it will show you how the group responded. Okay, 75% chose the correct answer, which was D, all of the above. This is one of those trick questions where it says choose the best answer. And I'm practicing with you to say, this is, when I say image, I mean, it could be a photograph, a picture, or a chart. Okay, that's why we're doing this practice question, to do two things: to get you familiar with the NearPod interaction, and to let you know when I say image, you can think of a photograph, you can think of some form of artwork, or you can think of something more like a pie chart or a data graphic. And if you are having some difficulty getting into NearPod and weren't able to see the share out, this is what the share out looked like. And now we'll go back to the presentation. It looked like the technology worked pretty well. I got a lot of responses. If you do have any technical issues, please work with Jim in the Zoom chat. Our first section is going to touch on some legal and ethical issues related to using images in presentations. Let me give the standard disclaimer that I'm not a lawyer. I understand copyright as a public policy, and I took a course for educators through Creative Commons. And I want to share some of the things that I learned that I think are relevant to presentations you may be giving. Let's start with some basics around copyright, one of the most important legal concepts related to using something that someone else has created and related to using images in presentations. Copyright limits your ability to copy, distribute, and modify some images. Copyright doesn't just apply to images, but here we're talking about how copyright applies to images. Copyright restricts what you can do with someone else's work. That is, sometimes it says you can't copy this, you can't distribute it, or you can't modify it. These two key points about copyright mean you need to think about the image itself and what you plan to do with it. The first key consideration relates to the image itself. This image is a graphic file of a painting that was made in 1914. And it's called The Mediathek Painting Thief. Mediathek, I don't know if you've ever had that as word of the day. That was a word I had to look up, but it means relating to the media. Okay, so here, this image, we can think, we can put it in our mind and it says, this is about stealing art. We don't want to be an art thief. But this image, for various reasons that we'll talk about later, is okay to use here. I'm not being an art thief, including this image here. The other key consideration is how you will be using the image. Will you be distributing it? Will you be modifying it? Those are also considerations. Let's walk through some of the things that you should consider about the image itself when you decide to use it. Some images you have the absolute freedom to use. This includes the images that you created yourself images where you have asked permission from the person who holds the copyright. And then there are some images that are in what's called the public domain. Everything created 1925 or earlier is in the public domain. So if you notice the detail about that painting created in the, or even before 1925. Also, works created by the US federal government in the course of government employees' work are also in the public domain. So these are images where you have virtually unlimited license to use those works. The next category to watch out for is the category that I would say red means stop, look, and listen. All rights are reserved. This is an image that you may have seen marked with the copyright mark. Then you know it's under copyright. You know to stop, look, and listen. Something that's less intuitive is that if there is no information on the image, legally, you should assume that it's under copyright unless you know that one of the other exceptions applies. Just because someone didn't put the copyright symbol doesn't mean that there is no copyright. Copyright in the US is what we call automatic. You don't need to put the symbol or register it for copyright to apply. Finally, there is this category called some restrictions. This includes things like Creative Commons licenses or stock photos or clip art that you may have purchased a license to, or there may be a license available to buy. Then you can use them, but usually only under certain conditions. So to recap here, this graphic adapts some of the information from the Creative Commons course, images that are free to use, that have some restrictions, or where all rights are reserved. These are all things to consider related to the image itself that you're choosing to use. Next, let's talk about how you will be using the image. Fair use is the legal principle that covers how you can use copyrighted material. This means it creates exceptions to copyright. So an image might be up in that red segment. You know it's under copyright. It has that little C in the circle. You know it's copyright. But there are still times when you could use that image. Fair use, it considers several factors, and the factors are considered on a case basis. Was anyone hoping that I would give you easy answers? Raise your hand if you're hoping for some easy answers. I do have an easy answer coming later in the presentation, but this part is not the easy answer. This part is still kind of complicated and like I said, in combination on a case-by-case basis. But you're more likely to be able to use an image if your use is not commercial, if your use is not a substitute for the original, and if your use doesn't reduce the market for the original. Okay. So if your use is not commercial, not a substitute for the original, and doesn't reduce the market for the original. Would an example help? Maybe two examples?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples First one is that more likely to be fair use. If the speaker displays a copyrighted image during a club speech, and the speech is being given primarily for the purpose of improving the speaker's presentation skills, then use of a copyrighted image is more likely to be fair use. It's clearly not commercial. It's not taking the place of some type of a likely commerce for that image. But if the speaker distributes a copy, a copyrighted image at an event, and the event is held primarily for the purpose of promoting the organization, that is less likely to be fair use. We've got some elements here like it's being distributed. So that's something copyright limits someone's right to distribute. And the purpose is promoting, which nudges up against the commercial. And you might have, for example, hired an artist to create promotional images. So this is why it's less likely to be considered fair use of a copyrighted image. So there are some better options for using images if you don't think fair use is going to cover it. And let me mention here that in raising these issues, I mention them because of something I see in every Pathways project. All of the Pathways projects ask us, do you understand how this applies to your life outside of Toastmasters? And I know that many people use their Toastmasters skills in their businesses, in their workplaces. And I want you to be aware of the alternatives that you may need to use when you are giving a presentation for your actual commercial business, public purpose. In those cases, it may be a better choice to create an image, to use a public domain or openly licensed image, or to ask permission from the copyright holder. Remember, those were the green parts of the image, the images you make yourself, images in the public domain, or images that are openly licensed. So we're going to pause here and I will stop screen sharing. And we'll do a little bit of confirmation. Actually, let me visit the chat first and answer some questions that you may have posed. And then we'll do some confirmation over in NearPod.
So we've got 3 questions for you, Jennifer.
Great.
First one is Creative Commons a repository of public use images?
Creative Commons is a nonprofit that has a lot of activities in this space about open licenses and alternatives to copyright. The CC search that we'll see later is what you might call a combination of search engines for images, but it's not itself a repository.
All right, thanks. Second question, does Google image search and Bing.com searches for images, would that get us in trouble?
I have seen those get people in trouble more than once. You can add some advanced settings to Google image search and I think Bing image search. I don't have it in scope to cover those advanced settings right now in this presentation, but CC search will do a lot of the things that those search engines will.
All right, excellent. And then last question, are sites that provide royalty-free images good for fair use and light commerce?
In those cases, those are in the yellow zone. and you need to read the terms and conditions about the specific use of those images. Okay, those would be in the yellow zone. Great questions. Let's just do some quick, go into NearPod, and I will move us to the next question to do some confirmation of understanding.
Andy, you got a few more of your judges. I'm still chasing Prasad and
Okay. So what should you consider to determine if you can legally use an image in your presentation? Thank you, folks who responded. The responses are showing definite, strong understanding of this, or else you've just learned how I tend to trick you, because this is another one where it's all of the above. You want to consider the image itself, what's in the image, and how you're going to use it. Well done. The next question is a little trickier. In which situations is there likely to be a legal or ethical problem using a copyrighted image? You may mark more than one response. The question is asking about option A. Your child includes images of dinosaur fossils in a report for school. B, you use images of nearby attractions to advertise your Airbnb. C, you create a calendar with photographs of healthy food and sell the calendar in a hospital gift shop. Or D, you publish a biography of your great-great-grandmother and include a drawing from her Civil War era diary. Okay. These ones are a little bit trickier. I'm sharing, we had a couple of, we had many folks guess correctly that B and C, the Airbnb example and the calendar example, would be problematic to use copyrighted images. A couple of folks also said D, and that was probably the trickiest one, but the Civil War era was before 1925, which means those images would be in the public domain now, just due to the passage of time. So those would be free to use. Thank you, everyone, for challenging yourself with these comprehension questions and interactions. Appreciate how well everyone has done with that. I wanted to just touch base with Jim and see if we have a hard stop at 2:05. We did start a little bit late, but I suspect we do still have a hard stop at 2:05. If you don't know that off the top of your head, that's okay, but I did want to check in on time.
Yeah, 2:15 is when International Speech Contest begins. So I don't think it's a hard stop. We've got a little bit of time.
Okay. If it's okay with folks, I think I'm going to aim for a landing at 2:10. Give everyone, if you have to leave, please do leave if you need to, but we'll probably be ending more at 2:10, so there is a little bit of a break. This next topic is something called alt text. And when you include images in your presentation, it might not be an instinct yet, or an intuition, it might not be intuitive to think about people who are visually impaired and might be using your presentation with a screen reader. But people who are visually impaired and are using a screen reader, it works much better for them if you include something called alt text, because otherwise what they have is, they know there's a picture there, but they may have no information about what the picture actually contains. It's a written description of an image, and it makes your presentation more accessible to people who use that software. And in education and government, alt text is often legally required. What does alt text look like, and how do you add it? Let's say you were giving this presentation about genealogy research at Ellis Island, and you're using this image of the Statue of Liberty. How would you add alt text so that someone using a screen reader knows what's in your picture? Here's an example of how you would include it in Google Slides. You'd select the image, right click, select alt text, and then type a description, a title and a description, such as Statue of Liberty, close up of head and raised right arm of Statue of Liberty. Okay, that's how you'd add that in Google Slides. Maybe you're more familiar, you use PowerPoint more often. There you would select the image, right click and select edit alt text. Or if you use the menus, there's an alt text icon on the picture format menu, and it brings up a box over to the right where you would type in your alt text. Now we are going to practice how you would add some alt text. Let's go to NearPod, and I'm going to bring up another question, and you will actually practice adding alt text. Okay, type the alt text you'd use to describe this image for someone using a screen reader. I do have the image credit there. It says paper airplane world record holders by go-karts is licensed under CC BY 2.0. However, that's not the best way to describe it probably. You want, for alt text, you want something that is more a picture of what someone would see. So as you think about what to write, try to describe what's in the image. Okay, Jim has done an excellent job. I'm going to go ahead and, Jim, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to share out your response. 3 paper airplanes. The first is a triangle with red and blue lines. And I actually can't read the entire rest of it in my view. Let's see. But hopefully you can see that as an example.
That's very good.
Yeah, we didn't even practice that. So well done. Great. Let's pause again for questions. And see, have there been any new questions in the Zoom chat?
Nope, nothing submitted.
Okay. Well done. Thank you for everyone who was willing to give a try at writing some alt text. Now, our last, we've got about 10 minutes, and I want to talk to you about CC Search, which is going to eliminate a lot of the worries that you may have had after the legal and ethical portion by giving you a simple tool to find images that you are legally free to use.
CC search.
So Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that works to make it easier to legally share academic knowledge and creativity. And CC Search is a tool that they created to make it easy to find images that you're legally free to use. So you'll want to access the CC Search website here, search.creativecommons.org. And I know Jim has put that in the chat, and hopefully many of you were able to call that up already. I'm going to move ahead to our first demo, because I knew when I was putting this presentation together that I wanted to have an image of that Space Shuttle Challenger explosion, and I wanted to make sure that I could obviously use an image that I was legally entitled to use. In this presentation, I definitely didn't want to take any chances, right? So here I'm going to search for Space Shuttle explosion. And notice these boxes here, I can choose, I want something that I could use commercially, and I want use something that I could modify or adapt. This is just some settings I can use to get the images that I have the most freedom about how I will use them. And I can see, do I see any images that look right? And I scroll down, this is the image that I was looking for, the one that matched the story I was telling. So here is how I use CC Search to find an image. We're going to do our next activity. We'll do this one together. Here you're going to look for a photo that you would be free to modify and include in a brochure promoting North Carolina tourism. So follow along with me as we go to the CC Search website, mark the boxes for use commercially because we're promoting North Carolina tourism, and we're modifying or adapting it because it says we want to be able to modify it. Like maybe we want to be able to make it black and white, or we want to be able to cut it into a shape of the state of North Carolina or something. We want to be free to modify it and use it commercially. So on the CC Search website, we want to make sure these filters are still checked, use commercially, modify or adapt, and then type in North Carolina. Okay.
Yuck.
So these first two, maybe not the best choices for tourism, but scroll down and you'll probably see some of the beautiful things in our state that you might want to use to promote some tourism. So here's an image of downtown Raleigh. We could select. And one advantage here is you know it's in Raleigh. Think about how embarrassing it would be to say it's a downtown scene and you're promoting Raleigh, but then someone points out, oh, hey, no, that's actually Charlotte, or that's actually Charleston, right? Here, you can see the caption and you know what it is. You can give credit to the creator. That's something that's usually required for Creative Commons licenses, that you give credit to the person who made the image. And then you can use this copy to include that either right on the slide, which is how I personally like to do it, or you can put it at the end on maybe an image credit slide. Okay, so that would be how you could use that. Our third activity here is one you're going to do independently and find a picture of your favorite animal. Okay, we have a NearPod question for that. And I'm going to let you post pictures of your favorite animals. I'm not going to review these before they post for you, so everybody make sure your favorite animals are in family-friendly configurations. And go back to CC Search, search for your favorite animal. Go ahead and use these settings about using commercially, modify, or adapt. And then what you'll do is down at the bottom of your NearPod screen, you'll paste in, or not paste in, sorry, you'll need to save it to your computer and then add it. I can walk through that part with you. And then also paste in the information for the citation, doing the copy piece. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So down here, bottom of the NearPod screen, there's a box with a picture on it, and you can use that to add a picture from your computer. And this is also where you would paste in the text that you copy from CC Search. Checking on time. We have 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes.
And one question before we hit the end for you, Jennifer. Does CC Search find videos and images?
Let's go to CC Search. I am not sure if they've implemented the video part of it yet. I think that is something they're aspiring to do, but I don't know if they have images available or videos available yet. Let's see. I'm going to just search on Lion. Okay, did they have? Yes, it doesn't support built-in video search yet, but they do point you toward some sources that you can use to find openly licensed videos. Good question. Okay. So I think I didn't get a chance to talk too much about how to actually get the image from here to NearPod, because you would need to save the image, the lion here, and then upload it into NearPod. And with us being short on time, I'm not sure how realistic that expectation that you'll be able to do that, but okay, Jim, good. Jim's got a tardigrade for us. Thank you. Good example. I'm going to try and upload that lion too. Gotcha. Let me conclude. In this presentation, you've learned the importance of knowing what's in an image before you use it. You've learned to add alt text for screen readers, to consider legal and ethical issues related to the image and how you'll use it, and an easy way to identify the image for your audience and give credit to the person who created it. I want to thank everyone who participated, and with your engagement and your questions, your thoughtful questions, have made it a true pleasure to share this information with you today.
Thanks, Jennifer. Everybody, let's please give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. And remember to leave the breakout room when you're done. You don't want to leave the whole Zoom session, but you'll leave the breakout room and head back into the main room. So thank you very much. Great presentation today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim, for a wonderful facilitation. Couldn't have done it without you.
Anyone has any questions about the district business meeting, please send me a private chat. I'd be glad to chat with you.